Hey, welcome back. It's Sarah from Roadworthy. So, everybody is putting out their top 10 books of 2023, and I really struggle with that concept. I just struggle with what is the best? You know, how do you compare sort of a graphic memoir to, I don't know, experimental literary fiction or a nonfiction history book to science fiction? You know, like what is making, you know, is it reading experience? Is it, I don't know what that is. So I hemmed and hawed on how to summarize my reading for 2023, and I still don't think I have a great answer, but I thought what I would do is sort of go through, sort of summarize, reflect on the reading year, and then pull out some of the superlatives from the year, if that makes sense. So I read 155 books in 2023. 33 of those were nonfiction, which I was super pleased about because I hadn't read any nonfiction, I think, up until 2, maybe 3 years ago. So really pleased with the amount of nonfiction that I read. And it was graphic nonfiction, it was memoir, it was personal essay, histories, like it was all over the map. And so I feel like I'm really kind of honing in on what I like in nonfiction. Probably my most impactful nonfiction, I don't even know if that's the right word, was Legacy of Violence, A History of the British Empire by Geraldine Elkins. Was this enjoyable? No. It's exactly what's described on the tin. It is really the history of the British Empire and how the British Empire got increasingly violent and repressive, and how they would take those tactics from one part of the British Empire to another and amplify them. This is a super comprehensive book. It's a chunkster, but you know, I feel like it was so helpful for me to understand some of what's going on around the world and why is my light blinking. Hang on. I don't know why it's blinking, so we're just gonna pretend it's not blinking. And so, and it also just, again, gave me even context for the situation that's in Palestine now. Palestine was a British protectorate? No, administrative region? Like, I forget what its classification was, but anyway, you know, it's interesting to see how those events in the 40s is weighing into today. I read 39 translated books. I thought I kind of read more translated fiction than that, but I didn't. So that's something that I'm thinking about. How do I improve on that? I feel like as I was going through the list of books, I thought, God, my reading taste is really changing. And I think part of that has to do with sort of the more you read and the more you're exposed to different types of books, yeah, you discover things that you start to like more. And so there were a couple of books that I felt like maybe 5 years ago I really would have loved, and maybe they just didn't work for me. So for example, I read Horse by Geraldine Brooks this year, and I thought it was okay, but I've loved her books in the past. And I don't necessarily think that Horse was less of a book. I just feel like it was pretty generic historical fiction, and I feel like my tastes are evolving. I had a number of books that really surprised me in how much I enjoyed them. I read Amy and Isabelle from Elizabeth Strout this year, my first Elizabeth Strout book ever, and I loved it. I just thought those characters were amazing. Sort of their relationship was amazing. Like I just thought that book was really, really strong, and I was really impressed with that book. I thought, oh my God, I guess I have to read more Elizabeth Strout. So that was a really pleasant surprise. I listened to Will and Testament by Vigdis Hjorth. And that book is about the inheritance of these adult children, and how not all of the children continue to get along with the parents as adults, and again how those relationships and everybody's feeling slighted, and anyway, sort of that family drama. Again, I thought that book was so amazing, mostly because Hjorth does a great job of really presenting everybody's perspective on the situation. Nobody comes across as great. Everybody seems to be a little bit at fault, right? Like you can't easily side with one person, like you get everybody's perspective in this long-standing family argument. So again, that book really pleasantly surprised me. Probably the most interesting book in unconventional, experimental maybe, is Empty Theater by Jemc. And this has a really, really long subtitle, but it is about Ludwig, King of Bavaria, and his cousin, Queen Sissi of Austria. And it's described as like wildly over the top social satire and tragicomic, and and it kind of is those things, but it's kind of a romp, but there is a tragic element, and so it is their relationship through the ups and downs, through mental illness, through it's their relationship and how they navigate or not navigate their royal positions. And yeah, it was unlike anything else I've read this year. I don't even know. I think I read the Kirkus review. And I think that's how I heard about it. But it's a book that I haven't really heard anybody talk about, but it was a little bonkers. And again, a super surprising book for me. Best new to me author, I have to think, is Stephen Markley. I read The Deluge earlier this year and absolutely was blown away by that book. It is climate fiction. And Markley really takes a sort of 8 characters' perspectives, I want to say starting in maybe the 2000-ish, up to maybe 2040, something like that. And it's what's happening to these characters, various characters, as the climate crisis evolves. And how these stories eventually come together. It is just a masterful piece of craft. It is plot heavy, but the characters are incredibly rich. This is a chunkster, but it doesn't feel like there's padding in it. I mean, it is epic. And again, how Markley keeps all of these plates in the air spinning, I don't know. It's really an achievement. The other book that I think about as really being the most memorable for me is another climate fiction book, The Light Pirate by Lily Brooks-Dalton. This book takes place in Florida. So we've all heard about, Florida will be underwater, right? When the seas rise, 2 inches or whatever it is, But this is exactly taking place over that time. So it's a coming of age book. But Brooks-Dalton really sort of shows you in an incredibly realistic way what will happen as sea level rises in Florida, right? You start to get crumbling infrastructure, right? And you see this now. A1A, parts of it get wiped out every year because of hurricane. And it gets rebuilt every year. But at some point, right, people start to leave. And so you could start to have a crumbling tax base. And suddenly there's not funds to replace A1A. And, and power lines go down. And again, sewers break down, right? And again, at some point, people just start to walk away. And it was so realistic that, again, I still can't stop thinking about it. It scares the bejesus out of me. But that's just like the background in this book. Like I said, this is really a coming of age story about our protagonist is born during a hurricane. And again, it's her sort of growing up with all of these changes occurring in the society around her. Her friendship with an older woman who lives down the street. And the writing is just beautiful. I can still picture some of the scenes. Just how people are surviving and thriving through this collapse. I thought that book was amazing. And again, I haven't really heard too many people talk about it. So that was probably my most memorable. I did read a couple of books that really like solidified an author's reputation for me. You know, like I will pick up every book this author writes going forward. Trust by Hernan Diaz. Not that I loved my reading experience of Trust. I thought that book was an amazing piece of craft, but it is incredibly different from his debut In the Distance, which was also nominated for the Pulitzer Prize. So Trust won, or was the co-winner, but In the Distance was also nominated. Like, I just think he's an amazing writer, and I will pick up whatever he does next, and I am 100% confident it will be completely different from his last two books. I also really enjoyed Tan Tan Eng's House of Hidden Doors. I read his earlier book, Garden of Evening Mists, and both of those books were just sumptuous, very atmospheric, very place heavy. Yeah, he's another one where I feel like I will pick up, I need to go back. He has one other book that I haven't read, and I will pick up whatever he writes next. I read a lot of heavy hitters this year that I really enjoyed. I read Demon Copperhead, Covenant of Water by Abraham Verghese, North Woods by Daniel Mason, Heaven and Earth Grocery by James McBride. Loved all those books. Then I had Hidden Gem. You know, I was going through some of the books, again, that I hadn't really heard anything about. And there was one, Lookout by Christine Byl. I think it's pronounced Byl. And she is a author from Montana. And I think this was her debut, as I recall. And I was shocked to see that this book only had 58 reviews on Goodreads. I was shocked. This is a dual coming of age. It is Cody, who's the daughter of this ranching family, her coming of age story, as well as going back to her father, Josiah, and a coming of age story for him as well. It's a lot about work, the land, ranching, Montana. It's very, again, a lot about the landscape and working the land. It's very visceral. Yeah. But yet again, it's these relationships in this family, and Byl is very just empathetic, and you know, again, I thought this book was really great. And I was stunned that there were only 58 reviews. So that's a book more people need to read. But so I feel like 2023 was a good reading year for me. I wanted to read more nonfiction, which I did. I pushed myself to read more translated fiction. And again, I've picked up things that maybe I for sure wouldn't have picked up in the past. And again, I still feel like I'm trying to catch up to my reading taste. You know, I'm still trying to hone in on what I really like. And, you know, I think part of that journey is just, continuing to pick up a variety of books, around the world from different publishers. Again, just keep pushing and keep exploring. And I feel like that's probably the aspect of my reading life that I've enjoyed the most over the past year. When I think about all these books that I did really enjoy, when I go through the list and look at, wow, I really like that book, I really like that book, I'm finding, that they're translated or they're books that didn't have a big splash. So I got to keep searching out these little gems in 2024 and, perhaps being a bit more cautious about the big buzzy books, because I DNF'd, I mentioned some of the heavy hitters that I did enjoy, but I put a lot down too. So yeah, just more reading evolution. And I'm looking forward to continuing that journey in 2024, reading more genres, reading more, reading more nonfiction, and reading more world literature. I feel like is something I want to keep doing. So those are my thoughts and reflections on 2023 as a reading year, with some of my superlatives thrown in there. I love watching other people's top 10 read videos. I just couldn't seem to create one myself. So this is kind of the best I could do. Thank you for bearing with me as I rambled on. And I will see you in the next one. See ya.